Trump's new press secretary goes on a rampage after this woke reporter keeps spouting DEI nonsense.
Two questions. So we now know that the staffing was not normal at the air traffic tower, and so with the government freezing the hiring of new federal workers and offering buyouts, are you not afraid that more incidents of different kind could happen with less staffing in different agencies?
Well, the president is intent on ensuring that we are increasing staffing at these agencies, and that's why he signed a very strong executive order on his second day in office, immediately terminating DEI hiring practices at the FAA. He also, following the tragic crash, as you all know, in the Oval Office yesterday, signed a memorandum directing an immediate assessment of the FAA to ensure the federal government is maintaining the highest personnel and aviation safety standards. And I would also just say there's a cultural piece to this as well. If you are an American who has spent many years studying aviation and you graduate from school and you're an air traffic controller based on skill and merit, and then you apply for a job and you're forced to fill out a biographical questionnaire asking you the color of your skin and asking you where you're from in details that aren't relevant at all to the job description, I think that deteriorates the morale of people in this industry. And if you talk to people in this industry, they'll tell you that. In fact, many of them filed a lawsuit against the FAA a couple of years ago under Joe Biden's administration because they were denied positions because of this DEI hiring practice that was putting identity politics over merit and skills. That's unacceptable. And I think just to put a fine point on this, because this is the third or fourth question I've answered on this subject, when you are flying on an airplane with your loved ones, which every one of us in this room has, do you pray that your plane lands safely and gets you to your destination, or do you pray that the pilot has a certain skin color? I think we all know the answer to that question, and as President Trump said yesterday, it's common sense. Rob Crilly.
Yeah, I'd just like to follow up on that last question, actually. Has there been any sort of assurance from the FAA that they will immediately improve staffing levels, given the reports of not normal staffing levels on Wednesday?
Oh, absolutely. You had Secretary Duffy here yesterday at the White House at this podium saying that he is on it, and we can all trust that he definitely will be. John Decker.
Thanks a lot, Carol. You followed me, right?
Yes, I did.
Thank you very much.
As long as your name's still John Decker.
It is, absolutely. Thank you. The president's meeting today with the founder and CEO of Nvidia. What is that meeting concerning, and who sought that meeting?
I don't have details on this. It's a private meeting. It will take place at 2:30 p.m. I'll try to get there in time, and I can let you know after. How's that?
On Guantanamo Bay, can you give more details about setting up that detention facility at Gitmo? How will that come about? What's the timing in terms of standing it up? And of course, this has happened before during the Clinton administration.
Yeah, that's right.
Detainees of Cuban and Haitian descent were both detained at Guantanamo. Are you looking at that model in setting up this detention facility?
Secretary Hegseth, I believe, was on television this morning answering this question, and he said that the Department of Defense is already on it. He has directed his agency to ensure that Gitmo is increasing their capacity for beds, and that's exactly what President Trump's executive order did. It directed Secretary Hegseth and also Secretary Noem to expand the Migrant Operations Center at the Naval Station to provide for this extra detention space. And as Secretary Hegseth confirmed this morning, that operation is underway. Sure.
Caroline, on the tariffs, can you clarify whether those will actually be going into effect tomorrow, or whether there might be some lead time?
Yes.
And are those, they will be going into effect tomorrow?
Correct.
And are those meant to be in place long term, or is there a scenario in which Canada, Mexico, and China can offer concessions and then they would be removed?
At this point, the president has made it very clear those tariffs are going to be implemented and in effect. If the president at any time decides to roll back those tariffs, I'll leave it to him to make that decision. But starting tomorrow, those tariffs will be in place. Sure.
Thanks, Caroline.
Yes.
Can you confirm a report by our friends at the Daily Mail that the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer is going to be visiting the White House in February? And also, if I may, do you have any more details on Netanyahu's visit here next week?
Sure. I have not seen that report about the Prime Minister. I can go check back with our friends at the National Security Council and get back to you on that. I can confirm that Prime Minister Netanyahu will be here on Tuesday, February 4th, for a working meeting and visit with the President. And I'm sure you will all be here, very excited to cover that visit. Sure. Daniel.
Thank you, Caroline.
You're welcome.
Back on the Guantanamo Bay subject, specifically, obviously, why does the president feel like that's the best location or a good location to make sure that Americans are safe from violent, illegal migrant crime?
Well, it's a really good question, and the memorandum that he signed, the order that he signed, builds on his previous executive actions, obviously, to secure our southern border and deport illegal criminals from the interior of our country. We know that we have an issue with detention space here in the interior, which is a big reason why Congress needs to pass this reconciliation package as quickly as possible to ensure that DHS and ICE have the funding they need to detain these individuals, that the administration is very swiftly rounding up and deporting, arresting and deporting these illegal immigrant criminals. And so the president feels it's an appropriate place. Taxpayers are already funding it. The space is there. Why not use it? And the Secretary of Defense, as I said, is working on that as we speak. Sure. Yes.
Thank you so much for having me here and answering a question. So I want to talk more about the success that ICE is having finding these violent criminal aliens, some of them being sexual predators. But my friend Ben Bergquam reports that the Chicago mayor and the Illinois governor are preventing ICE agents from going into jails and prisons to enforce detainers against illegal aliens. In Maryland, the Attorney General has also put out a memo hindering local police cooperation with ICE. Does the administration have any comment on leftist state and local officials defying ICE and Trump's deportation efforts?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting that Democrat officials in these cities who have been completely overrun and overwhelmed by illegal immigrant criminals would refuse support and help to cure this problem that has especially taken over their cities. I guess they don't want to admit they've been wrong with their sanctuary city policies. I'm not sure. You'll have to ask them about their intentions, but they would be very wise to comply with this administration, because this administration is hell-bent on enforcing our nation's immigration laws, and this administration will continue to arrest and detain and deport illegal migrant criminals. And what we won't do is defy our nation's immigration laws like the previous administration, who had these orders of removal on illegal immigrants across the country and were refusing to execute on them. We will continue to remove illegal criminals from our nation's interior.
The mayors in the sanctuary cities who are refusing help from ICE and the federal government are just as much at fault for the disasters in these cities as the illegal immigrants who commit the crimes themselves. This is an easy fix. All you have to do to make your streets and your city safer is just to comply with President Trump and ICE and Tom Homan. That's all you have to do. And the sheer fact that they are fighting tooth and nail to prevent this from happening makes you question where their allegiances are. Why on earth would you be against safer cities, less crime? It is in direct contrast to the oath that you swore to the city. There is a concerted effort in different places inside the government that are trying to undermine ICE and all of its efforts to make America safer, as there is a whistleblower inside of ICE who is telling the illegal immigrants where they are about to raid before it even happens. Tom Homan just got whiff of it, so you know what he did? He fired the person immediately, got rid of their pension, and they are going to get the full force of the law thrown against them. He is not playing around. America is not playing around anymore. If you are a legal immigrant in this country, the best thing that you could do is leave this country voluntarily, or else you are not going to be able to come back for at least 20 years. For far too long, we have allowed anyone in to drain our tax dollars and make our cities and make our country less safe. We are not standing for that any longer.
City leaders, are they violating the law?
I would certainly think so. I'd have to check back on which specific law they're violating, but certainly if they're not enforcing our nation's immigration law, sounds like they are breaking the law. And I would also add that their constituents don't approve of that. You've seen residents in Chicago show up at their city council meetings infuriated with their leadership in that city because they are working very hard to provide for their families. They want public safety and law and order, and their officials have abandoned those very basic American principles in these cities. And the American people want law and order. It's, again, an overwhelmingly popular policy to deport illegal criminals from our nation's interior, and this administration will continue to affect that goal. Sure.
A question on Colombia. We just interviewed Colombian President Gustavo Petro, and he insisted that he's not going to take any Colombian deportee from the U.S. if they arrive in South America handcuffed. How this administration responds to that?
When did the Colombian president make those remarks?
Today, for an interview with us at Univision.
Well, I will share those with the President of the United States, and I will get back to you on his response.
What happens if Nicolas Maduro?
Caroline, There are more than 150,000 disabled Americans who are working today. The president talked a lot yesterday about hiring the best and the brightest to work in the federal government. Safety aside, does he believe that disabled people do have a place to work in the federal government? And does he also support the current protections for disabled people working in the private sector as well?
The president has made it very clear that this is a common sense solution to solving some of the problems that we have seen at the Federal Aviation Administration and also when it comes to many of the federal agencies across our government. People should not be hired based on their disabilities, based on their skin color, their gender, their race. None of that matters. What matters to this president and this administration is how well you can do your job, and the American people agree with that sentiment. So it's about competence, skill, and merit. And so the president is focused on ensuring that the most competent individuals, the best and the brightest in this country, are in positions in this federal government, especially when it comes to public safety. Can't overemphasize the importance of those jobs. Sure.
Caroline. So as follow-up on her question before, President Trump is holding China accountable on fentanyl by ramping up tariffs. So how is President Trump planning to hold China accountable on COVID origins?
I haven't spoken to the president about the COVID origins specifically in regards to any actions he may or may not take when it comes to China. But as I have previewed quite a few times today, he will be implementing a 10% tariff on China tomorrow. Sure.
Has the president made up his mind about a timeline for tariffs on the EU?
No, he has not.
And will it be a one-size-fit-all, or will it be differentiated among governments? I
won't get ahead of the president on tariffs when it comes to the European Union. What I can tell you, again, is that the president will be implementing 25% on Canada, 25% on Mexico, 10% on China tomorrow for the reasons that I have repeatedly laid out in this briefing. Newsmax, go ahead. Yes.
Thank you so much.
No, the gentleman behind you.
James Rosen.
Yes, James. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Two quick questions on foreign policy, and then one very long and tedious and ponderous Rosen question thereafter. First, on Iran, we've heard very little about the president's forthcoming Iran policy besides his determination to prevent that nation from achieving a nuclear weapons capability. Is it the president's objective, short of the use of U.S. military force, to use the broad array of his powers to try to hasten the end of the Iranian regime?
I think the president has actually made his position on Iran very clear, and he made that clear when there were the negotiations about the ceasefire, which we know obviously is now in place, and the deadline on that ceasefire has continued. He said that Hamas and Iranian-backed terrorists would have hell to pay if that ceasefire didn't move forward, and then quickly thereafter it did. I also do have news on the hostage front, which I'm very surprised nobody asked about this because it is big news story, and the White House applauds the release of 8 additional hostages from Hamas captivity, thanks to the ceasefire deal secured by President Trump. 3 Israeli and 5 Thai nationals are being reunited with their families and their loved ones after being held in unspeakable conditions for over 15 months. And the president remains committed to the release of all remaining hostages, and they should have never been taken by the brutal terrorist group Hamas in the first place. And I think President Trump's working meeting with the Israeli Prime Minister next week emphasizes his continued support for Israel and ensuring that brutal terrorists in that region have hell to pay. Sure.
Can I just finish the other 2 questions?
Sure.
I know you want the long, ponderous Rosen. But first, on the Grinnell trip, as you know, under the previous administration, the U.S. recognized the opposition candidate in last year's elections, Edmundo Gonzalez, now exiled, as the legitimate president of Venezuela. Does the president's dispatching of Ambassador Grinnell to negotiate directly with President Maduro today mean that the U.S. now officially recognizes President Maduro as the legitimate president of Venezuela?
Absolutely not. As I made it very clear, former ambassador and now special envoy Rick Grinnell is going to Venezuela with 2 very clear directives. Make sure that Tren de Aragua members, of which there are 400 currently in custody, are repatriated back to Venezuela, and that all United States detainees return home.
She hit the nail on the head. The thing we love about Trump is he's going to say it how it is. He's not going to sugarcoat anything because we had 8 years of Obama. Obama was as polished a speaker as they come, but that does not mean he was a good president. All that meant is that he was good at reading words off of a page. His policy decisions, however, were disastrous for this country, and he almost made irreparable damage to this country in the divisive rhetoric that he was spewing. It's just refreshing to see an administration being as transparent as they are, because they're not hiding anything back. They are tackling 1,000 different things at once, and they want the American people to be there every step along the way. Going back to DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency led by Elon Musk, he wants to put the entire United States spending on a blockchain. A blockchain is transparent so that anybody could see it. He wants the average American to know every single expenditure that the government has. Never before in the history of this world has there been a civilization or government that has been this open and transparent with its people. Trump is not just trying to have another 4-year term and accomplish some minor things. He is attempting one of the greatest feats, which is to clear the swamp entirely. Only have people in positions of power who are working to ensure your security and your prosperity. We don't serve a monarchy. We are in charge of one another, and we dictate who gets to represent us. But somewhere along the line, those people who we elected stopped having our best interests at heart. They were selling us out, and the media was complicit alongside of it. This is exactly why Trump is the perfect person to put America back on the right track. He is surrounding himself with all the right people. Caroline Leavitt is no exception. She is an ace. One of, if not the greatest press secretary I've seen so far, and it's only been a couple weeks. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on this down below. Who was your favorite press secretary that you have ever seen? It could be from Reagan's term, could be from Trump's first term, Biden's term. Let me know. I'd love to know your opinions. And if you enjoyed, make sure to smash that like, comment, subscribe, and wish you guys nothing but the best. Till next time.